Today, we are examining a series of complex, structural developments concerning the Iraqi dinar that are being discussed within specific financial and economic circles. While not always in the mainstream headlines, a collection of nuanced signals related to Iraq's economy and banking sector is drawing observation. These elements, taken together, map out a long-term process of financial modernization and integration that Iraq has been undertaking. We will be looking closely at what these signals are, what they mean in a practical sense, and how they relate to the established frameworks of international finance. This is a story about infrastructure, policy, and the meticulous, step-by-step process of aligning a nation's economy with global standards. The central theme emerging from these observations is the concept of international recognition. This is not an abstract label but a technical milestone in the financial world. When a currency achieves what is often called global market watch status, it signifies that major international financial institutions are actively monitoring its performance, stability, and trade volumes. It is a procedural step, indicating that a currency has moved from being relatively obscure to being formally tracked and analyzed. This stage is often a prerequisite before any consideration is given to inclusion in broader, full-scale international trading platforms, or currency baskets. Think of this watch status as analogous to a country's financial credit score. Just as a lending institution reviews an individual's financial history and behavior before extending significant credit, global institutions observe a nation's economic indicators. They scrutinize the stability of its currency, the volume of its trade, and the health of its underlying economy. This scrutiny is a preparatory phase. For the Iraqi dinar, reaching this observational stage means its daily financial activities and policy implementations are being reviewed at a high level by banks, trading platforms, and economic analysts worldwide. The signal suggests that Iraq is methodically working to fulfill the technical requirements that have historically preceded such recognition events. One of the most significant and foundational signals is the comprehensive modernization of Iraq's banking sector. This is not a recent development but a sustained effort by the Central Bank of Iraq, reportedly spanning more than 2 years. The objective has been to implement a sweeping series of reforms designed to strengthen the country's internal banking systems and ensure their compliance with established international financial standards. These reforms are deeply technical but crucial for building a credible financial ecosystem. They include substantial upgrades to the nation's digital payment networks, a move essential for participating in the modern global economy. This modernization effort also involves actively expanding the connections between Iraqi banks and their counterparts, both within the Middle East and in other international financial hubs. Such steps are fundamental for facilitating smoother and more transparent cross-border transactions, a key requirement for any currency seeking a greater international role. The implications of this banking modernization are far-reaching. By enhancing transparency and improving the standards of financial reporting, Iraq is signaling to the global market its commitment to handling foreign investment and international trade responsibly. These structural improvements, while often slow-moving and technical, form the bedrock of a currency's journey toward gaining international credibility. They are designed to provide a more structured and professional financial environment, which is a key consideration for international partners and institutions. Another key signal being observed is Iraq's progress in managing its domestic economy, particularly concerning its reliance on the US dollar for internal transactions. Over the past year, reports indicate the country has made a significant effort to decrease its dependency on the dollar. Some analyses suggest this reliance on the dollar for local transactions has been reduced by a notable margin, with figures cited at over 40%. This shift is not merely a technical adjustment but reflects a deliberate, broader strategy by the nation's financial authorities. This strategic move toward de-dollarization in the domestic economy is multifaceted. It is interpreted by analysts as an assertion of greater control over Iraq's own financial system and monetary policy. When a country takes concrete steps to increase the utility and prevalence of its own currency within its borders, it gains greater flexibility and influence in its economic management. This process is seen as a foundational element for building long-term stability and asserting the dinar's relevance on a wider stage for international observers. This reduction in dollar dependency is a subtle but powerful indicator. It demonstrates a methodical, step-by-step approach toward strengthening the dinar's role, not just as a unit of exchange, but as a store of value within its own economy. While this action does not relate to the currency's external value, it shows a clear policy direction aimed at building a more resilient and sovereign financial foundation. This is a development that financial institutions monitor closely when assessing a country's economic trajectory. Parallel to these policy shifts, let's examine the state of Iraq's foreign reserves. According to recent reports, the country is understood to hold a significant cushion of foreign reserves, with figures estimated to be in excess of $100 billion. This is a critical metric in international finance. Possessing substantial reserves indicates that a country has the necessary resources to manage its currency and maintain stability, particularly in the face of market fluctuations or economic shocks. It provides a buffer and a tool for monetary policy. Large reserves do more than just signal financial strength. They also provide critical flexibility in international trade and negotiations. This level of financial backing is one of the key data points that global institutions like the International Monetary Fund evaluate when considering a currency's readiness for wider recognition or integration. It demonstrates that Iraq has the financial capacity to meet its international obligations and manage its currency effectively on the world stage, which is a prerequisite for greater trust for those tracking the dinar's progress. This level of reserves represents a significant data point. It suggests the country's financial position is not precarious but is instead being actively managed to build resilience and credibility. This kind of financial bolstering is a classic preparatory step that has often been observed in other economies before they achieved greater recognition in international markets. It is part of a broader picture of structural and financial readiness. Now, let's turn to the backbone of Iraq's economy, oil production. This remains a critical signal for the country's overall economic health. Reports indicate that Iraq's oil output has returned to high and stable levels, with production figures reportedly exceeding 4 million barrels per day. As oil constitutes the vast majority of the nation's revenue, consistent and robust production indicates both economic stability and the potential for sustained government income. This revenue is the primary engine funding the nation's budget, its reforms, and its accumulation of foreign reserves. International markets and institutions invariably assess a country's management of its key resources before elevating the status of its currency. Iraq's progress in maintaining high production levels is therefore essential. Furthermore, there is an increasing emphasis on the government's transparency in the management and allocation of these substantial oil revenues. Improved transparency in this area signals a readiness for the intense financial scrutiny that comes with greater international participation. Observing the trends in oil production and revenue management provides a clearer view of the economic foundation supporting the dinar. While Iraq faces ongoing challenges in diversifying its economy away from oil, the stabilization and professional management of its primary resource are subtle but important signals. These trends are often seen as foreshadowing a strengthening of the underlying economic fundamentals, which is a necessary precursor to any formal consideration of the currency's international status. Political stability is another factor that plays a significant role in how a country is perceived by international institutions. Reports note that over the past 3 years, Iraq's governing situation has demonstrated greater stability. This includes improvements in domestic governance and a concerted effort to strengthen relationships with neighboring countries. In the world of international finance, political stability is directly correlated with risk assessment. A more stable political environment reduces the perceived risk for international partners and bodies. This improved governance is a key factor in the decision-making processes of global institutions. It creates an environment where complex economic and banking reforms can be implemented more smoothly and effectively. Stable governance allows for the consistent execution of long-term economic strategy, from the modernization of banking systems to the management of foreign reserves and the negotiation of new trade agreements. These steps, while often slow-moving, are crucial signals that Iraq is progressively aligning itself with global financial expectations. The progress in this area suggests that the necessary groundwork is being laid for the country to be taken more seriously by international financial markets. This stability is the platform upon which all other economic reforms are built. Observers watching these developments can see a more coherent and structured approach to national management, which is a prerequisite for any potential re-evaluation of the dinar's role in the global financial system. Another hidden signal indicating this preparation is the expansion of Iraq's trade partnerships. The Central Bank of Iraq has reportedly been active in signing new agreements with banks in neighboring countries, including Turkey, Jordan, and the United Arab Emirates. These partnerships serve a dual purpose. On one hand, they practically expand Iraq's banking network, making international trade and transactions more efficient. On the other hand, they demonstrate a growing level of credibility and trust from regional financial institutions. The development of new cross-border payment systems and digital platforms as part of these agreements is particularly noteworthy. This shows that Iraq is not just signing treaties, but is actively building the modern infrastructure required to take on a more active role in international commerce. When a currency is supported by structured partnerships and modern technological infrastructure, it signals to global markets that the country is preparing to handle significant and increasing trading volumes in its own currency. These partnerships are a tangible sign that the dinar is being positioned for potential integration into regional and eventually global financial flows. Even if full international trading is not an immediate prospect, these foundational steps provide confidence to international observers that the currency's ecosystem is being systematically strengthened. This gradual buildup of financial connectivity is a hallmark of a currency moving toward greater relevance. Beyond the dominant oil sector, other macroeconomic indicators are also reportedly sending positive signals. Iraq's overall economic performance has been showing signs of steady improvement. Key metrics that international bodies watch closely, such as inflation rates, non-oil GDP growth, and foreign direct investment, are being monitored. Reports suggest that Iraq's performance in these areas is increasingly meeting the expectations and benchmarks required for consideration by global financial bodies. Consistent improvement in these diverse economic areas strengthens the overall credibility of the dinar. It reduces the perceived risk associated with the economy and demonstrates a move toward a more balanced and resilient model, one that is not solely dependent on a single commodity. While these indicators do not point to any specific outcome, they create an environment of stability in which international institutions become more willing to track, study, and potentially integrate the currency into larger market frameworks. This type of careful, data-driven preparation and steady improvement in key metrics is a pattern that has often preceded major milestones in global financial recognition. It is the quiet, foundational work that must be done before a currency can be considered for a more prominent role. The Global Market Watch status mentioned earlier is a critical milestone in this precise process. When a currency receives this designation, it signifies a shift. Achieving this status means the currency has moved beyond being ignored or relegated purely to speculative discussions. It is, at this point, being actively and formally tracked by international institutions. Analysts begin to monitor its trade volumes, assess its stability, and report on its economic indicators daily. This provides a structured, data-driven assessment of the currency's trajectory. This stage is often the one that immediately precedes the introduction of limited, structured international trading. To put Iraq's current path into perspective, comparisons with the historical trajectories of other currencies can be useful. Currencies that were once overlooked or strictly controlled, such as the Chinese yuan, gradually gained international recognition through a highly structured, step-by-step process. This path typically begins with internal reforms, followed by limited recognition, then a market watch status, and eventually, after many years, integration as a major reserve or trading currency. While every country's journey is unique, and comparisons are never perfect, the pattern of gradual international acceptance is a common one. Observing the current developments in Iraq, from its comprehensive banking reforms and reserve accumulation to its oil production stability and new trade agreements, it is clear that the dinar appears to be following the early stages of this type of trajectory. Understanding these historical parallels is useful for contextualizing the potential long-term implications of the recent developments. In conclusion, the Iraqi dinar is exhibiting multiple, interconnected signals that suggest a methodical preparation for greater international recognition. This is not a single event but a convergence of many factors. These include tangible banking reforms, the implementation of modern digital payment systems, a reported reduction in domestic dollar reliance, high and stable oil production, the accumulation of significant foreign reserves, and a more stable political environment that fosters new regional partnerships. While these signals are informational and relate to a long-term process, They indicate that international institutions are monitoring the situation. The key takeaway for any observer is to focus on the long-term trends, observe the verifiable milestones as they are announced, and base any analysis on tangible progress rather than speculation. This systematic alignment with global financial standards is a significant development in itself, representing a new phase in the dinar's long and complex history.